Have you ever wondered if it's legal to limit the duration of bail once it's granted? It's a question that might prompt a pause. You see, bail in its essence is a temporary release from custody, typically secured by a sum of money or property. It's a pillar of our justice system, ensuring the accused's appearance in court while respecting their presumption of innocence. However, misconceptions abound, including the idea that once bail is granted, it can be time-bound. This leads us to the central inquiry of our discussion today. Is it legal to limit the duration of bail? Now let's dive into a real-life case that challenged this very issue. Meet our appellant, a man charged under the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act. His story is one that unfolds in the tangled web of the justice system, where the lines between right and wrong often blur. Let's dive into his tale. Accused under the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act, our protagonist found himself in a predicament. His charges were severe, and as per the legal proceedings, he was held in incarceration. This wasn't a brief stint behind bars, but a prolonged period of confinement, where days turned into weeks and weeks into months, with no trial in sight. The walls of his cell, the bars on his windows, they became his world as he waited for his day in court. During this time, hope was not entirely lost. The appellant, understanding his rights, applied for bail. The wheels of justice turned and the matter found its way to the High Court of Orissa. In an unexpected move, the court granted him interim bail, but only for a period of 45 days. A glimmer of hope, albeit a fleeting one, as the court disposed of the application soon after. The man found himself facing the grim reality of his situation, a brief taste of freedom, only to have it snatched away once again. So, he was back in the confines of his cell, counting down the days of his temporary reprieve, uncertain of what the future held. The legal labyrinth had led him to a temporary escape, but the walls of his cell were closing in once again. But this is where things took a surprising turn. The Supreme Court of India stepped in and made a groundbreaking decision. The court took a strong stance against the High Court's practice of limiting the duration of bail. According to the Supreme Court, once a person is deemed entitled to bail, it becomes unlawful to restrict this right to a specific period of time. This decision was rooted in the principle of justice and fairness. The court observed that prolonged incarceration without a trial was not in line with the principles of justice. The Supreme Court emphasized that a person should not be subjected to undue hardship and should be given the chance to live a normal life while awaiting trial. The Supreme Court's ruling was not just a criticism of the High Court's practice, but also a declaration of a fundamental right. The court highlighted that the right to bail is an integral part of a fair trial process. The decision was definitive. Granting bail for only a limited duration is illegal once a person is entitled to bail. The Supreme Court went further to modify the High Court's order, granting the appellant bail until the final disposal of the case. This was a step towards ensuring fairness and justice for the appellant. The court's decision was a landmark one. It set a precedent for future cases, reinforcing the principle that the right to bail should not be arbitrarily limited. The court's pronouncement underscored the importance of ensuring that the rights of the accused are upheld throughout the legal process. So what does this all mean for our appellant and for the legality of limiting bail duration? Let's recap the key points from this intriguing legal journey. We started with an individual, the appellant, who was charged under the Narcotic Drugs and Psychotropic Substances Act. Despite a prolonged incarceration with no trial in sight, the High Court of Orissa granted him an interim bail, but only for a period of 45 days. This decision was put under the microscope by the Supreme Court, who criticized the High Court's practice of limiting the duration of bail. The Supreme Court's ruling was clear-cut and decisive. Once a person is granted bail, it cannot be limited to a specific period of time. This crucial verdict not only affected our appellant, who was then granted bail until the final disposal of his case, but also set a precedent for future cases. The implications of this ruling are far-reaching. It underlines the significance of liberty and the right to a fair trial, reinforcing the principle that justice should never be rushed nor constrained by time. So, the next time you hear about a bail duration being limited, remember the story of our appellant and the Supreme Court's ruling. No one's liberty should be bound by time, especially when justice is yet to be served.